Welcome back to the Racial Draft Podcast, where we change the complexion of the comic book universe one draft pick at a time. I am your host, Michael Ford, continuing into our season 8 coverage, round 11 of the Racial Draft. If this is your first episode, go ahead, go back and listen to the other episodes. But if not, I'll try to quickly run down what we do. Uh, Different racial delegations, of which there are 10, pick different characters to either solidify their race or bring them over to the fold, race bend them, if you will, and reimagine them through a racial and ethnic lens. I will jump right in. We're getting close to the dynasty portion of our season where these characters get drafted and held on to. But we're still finishing up the single season portion with round 11 of 12. And yeah, we'll just dive right in. First pick of this should go fairly quickly because a lot of these picks are characters that have been picked before. And who better to start off with is our black delegation, of which they drafted from their dynasty roster, John Stewart, the Green Lantern. As you may or may not have known, this is a character that was created and conceptualized as a black man. His racial design was based on Sidney Poitier. He is going to be played by a lighter skinned individual, and that has been a source of some consternation in Aaron Pierre. But he's always been black, and he's going to continue to be sexualized as black. So the black delegation just wanted to reinforce that with their pick. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and hope that the fan reaction portion of our draft picking, where you, the listener, can vote in a variety of different places, racialdraft.com, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, where else? I think that's it. Yeah, so go to the places, cast your vote, make your voice known, and let us know what you think of the picks, both past and future. But yes, 100% approval rating for still black John Stewart, and all 100% was strongly approved. Uh, Again, not too much else to be said. Moving on to a different pick. This is a character that was dynasty drafted, and you can sort of see it, but it's a little bit more controversial. And this is from the Native American delegation. They are bringing Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, into the fold again. This is a character that, I mean, has definitely been understood as a white guy, but I do think that this is a character that could stand to be a person of color, particularly when you think about the two sides of the Two-Face persona. One being one that is maybe more in line with being assimilationist and wanting to, import himself with the respectability that is demanded of a lot of people of color, and perhaps the darker side, so to speak, is the one that is unburdened by those social pressures. I think that that's a way of interpreting a character that could work for a number of different ethnicities. I'd like to hear the Native American kind of broaden that out a little bit. I know they've done it in previous seasons, and I think this could work. I don't think it's a harmful reimagining. I don't think it diminishes the character in any way. But a little bit controversial, as I said before. The voters only gave it a 66.6% approval rating, with 33.3 strongly approving and 33.3 somewhat approving, and then a 33.3 somewhat disapproving of Native American Two-Face. Like I said before, variety of different places. You can cast your votes, and the polls are still open on racialdraft.com and on Instagram at racial.draft. We move on to another pick from the Dynasty roster, and this is another defensive pick. This is the Swana Mina delegation, bringing in Talia al Ghul. Not a lot to be said there. This is a character that has traditionally been depicted as, some variation of Middle Eastern, sometimes Arab, sometimes otherwise. But again, This is not a character that I would imagine is better suited to be depicted in another way. And I think that there's a lot of room for this character, and we've seen this character in a variety of contexts, but there's still a lot of places that they could take her. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that she was whitewashed in The Dark Knight Rises, and that was obviously regrettable. Hopefully, in the future, that won't happen. Um, but again, Talia Al Ghul, 100% approval rating for her remaining Southwest Asian or North African. As far as the fan cast, a little bit more mixed, I would say. The fan cast was Sophia Pernas, who I'm trying to remember what she's been in. But I definitely think that she fits the look how she's traditionally been depicted in the comics. She definitely has the size and the physicality in her action roles, but only 60% approval rating for Sophia Pernas as Talia al Ghul, with 20% strongly approving and 40% somewhat approving and 40% somewhat disapproving of the fan list. Moving quickly to perhaps one of the more controversial picks of the draft, or at least of the round, and that would be from our multiracial delegation. And granted, a big part of multiracial delegation is that a lot of these characters can be reimagined as multiracial, particularly to the extent that they are white passing. And this is arguably not an exception. Kara Zor-El, with the L. She was the Earth 2 variation of Supergirl, who's all grown up, and in more ways than one, if you know what I mean. And yeah, she has been in the mainstream universe for a while, long enough to abandon the name Kara, and now is known as Paige, and that would be Power Girl. I would say the biggest impediment to Power Girl, despite the fact that she's blonde, is also that, she's meant to be a doppelganger, just a grown-up doppelganger of Supergirl. And, Supergirl is traditionally depicted as white. Supergirl was drafted, in fact, by the white delegation this season. So to the extent that Power Girl's origin is that of being the counterpart of Supergirl, then we're dealing with a situation where the races don't line up. And I, could totally see how the voters might feel that if you're going to have a white Supergirl, then you kind of have to have a white Power Girl. Sorry, Power Girl. And for that reason, I guess I could see the argument for why only 66% approval rating for multiracial Power Girl. 33.3 strongly approve, 33.3 somewhat approve, and 33.3 somewhat disapprove. Now, we did get a fan cast, and the fan cast, unfortunately, didn't go over well. That would be Naomi Scott, who you might know from the Smile movies, as well as the Aladdin movie, and also the Charlie's Angels movie. I mean, she is of mixed ethnicity. She does often wear blonde hair. But again, only 50% approval rating for Naomi Scott. Spock. We move on from Power Girl to another character that is defensive and off the Dynasty roster. This is Nico Minoru. You might know from the Runaways program. You might also know her from most recently appearing in animated form in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man series as Pete Parker's best friend. This is a character that has been depicted in every incarnation as East Asian. And, she was drafted by the Southeast Asian delegation. So, no complaints there. This is a defensive pick. And it's 100% approval rating, all 100 strongly approving of East Asian, Nico Minoru being East Asian. As far as the fan cast, though, slightly more controversial, still 100% approval rating. Grace Song, who I believe voices her in the animated series, was chosen as the fan cast. Now, me personally, I was a big fan of the actress who played her in the Runaway series. I think that she did an amazing job, and I'd love to see her back. I don't know a lot about Grace Song as an actress. I think she did a good job as a voice actress, but that doesn't always translate. So in that instance, still 100% approval rating, but only 66.7 strongly approve and 33.3 somewhat approve. Moving on to another character, both defensively picked and picked off the Dynasty roster. This is a character was Dynasty drafted way back in season 5, and that would be Yelena Belova, aka the White Widow, aka the adoptive sister of the Black Widow. And I think that she had a run when she debuted in live action. As played by Florence Pugh in the MCU. I think she made an amazing impact. And then, of course, who can forget her appearance in Hawkeye, where she also made an amazing impact. And Florence Pugh is very beloved. So I think that that goes a long way towards solidifying beyond just the character's origin of being the Black Widow and coming from the Russian Red Room program. Obviously, that lends itself to her remaining, Caucasian, and of course, name, Black Widow. So, I mean, all of that, plus the Florence Pugh of it all, I'm not surprised. It was a 100% approval rating for Yelena Belova remaining white, as well as a 100% approval rating for Florence Pugh, staying in the role as the fan cast. Top marks in that respect. Uh, Unfortunately, less than top marks for the next pick. And this is for one could argue for the inverse of reasons. We're dealing with the South Asian delegation who drafted Alexei Shostakov, aka the Red Guardian. This is a situation where, sometimes the race bend doesn't always work. In the Red Guardian, we're dealing with an ultra nationalist propaganda character akin to Captain America, but for Russia. And I would imagine that in order for Russian to be Red Guardian, he would have to represent the ideals of what Russia put forward. And I think that, as much as there are, of course, South Asians who live in Russia, I don't think that would be who Russia would put forward as the symbol of their national identity. I think that this is a situation where white supremacy wins out, unfortunately. And I would imagine that it's for that reason there's only a 40% approval rating for South Asian Red Guardian. As far as the fan cast, this is an actor that I am familiar with. I can't off the top of my head name what I've seen him in, but this is Raza Jaffrey uh, as the fan cast for the Red Guardian. It's a little bit on the small side as well. I think that as we've seen him in the MCU, he's generally depicted as a larger man, and Raza Jeffrey would have to beef up significantly in order to embody the role. But again, higher than 50%, 66.7 is not a bad approval rating for this fan cast. Just kind of stretch, just kind of stretch things a little bit. Um, Moving on from the South Asian delegation to the Jewish delegation. This is a character that we've seen quite a few times in live action, and we have seen him portrayed by, in fact, a Jewish actor. And this is John Constantine. He of the smoking, rough talking, dirtbaggy Britishness. I would say that we've seen him in a number of media, and he's always been portrayed by Matt Ryan, who is in fact himself Jewish. I think that clearly it works. We've seen this actor, and this actor has done it across a number of shows. He's also done an anime form, so he it really isn't taking much. It's not quite a defensive pick, but it's very close to a defensive pick for the Jewish delegation. And 100% approval rating, with all 100% strongly approving of the Matt Ryan fan cast. But as far as the pick itself, the 1.5% approval rating with a 28.6 strongly approving and 42.9 somewhat approving of Jewish John Constantine. And 14.3 and 14.3 are the somewhat disapproving and strongly disapproving pick. But again, I don't think it really does any damage to the character whatsoever. for the character to be Jewish on top of um, his other identity. Moving on to a pick that was also picked as part of a trade, and this is from the Polynesian delegation, Ray Palmer, aka the Atom. I would say this is a character that is a little bit more of a blank slate, if I'm being honest. And he, I mean, while he's traditionally depicted as white, there's nothing really in his origin that suggests that he has to be white. He is, of course, highly intelligent, which a lot of people can be. There's no one ethnicity that has a monopoly on that. But the important thing is, here we go. So yes, Ray Palmer, the Atom, was drafted by a Polynesian delegation, and there was also a fan cast. So as far as the pick would go, Ray Palmer got a 100% approval rating for the pick for him to be reimagined as Polynesian. The actor that was chosen, Jason Scott Lee, was picked as the fan cast, and a little bit different, 66.7% approval rating, with all 66.7 strongly approving, and then 33.3 somewhat disapproving. But you know, not too much else to say in that respect. Yeah, I mean, Polynesian delegation got themselves the Atom. He's been popping up a little bit more in comics due to the reimagining of the Justice League. And then that brings us to the final pick of the round. This one may be a little bit more controversial, but Merlin, aka Black Archer, um, aka Arthur Quinn. This is a character that has, we've seen him reimagined slightly in live action, where he's played by John Barrowman in the Arrowverse. But again, there's not a lot to the character that suggests that he has to be, other than the kind of king author of it all. I mean, I do think that Green Arrow himself has often been depicted as white. So there's a reason, theoretically, that one of his arch nemesis would also be white. However, this is a situation where the Green Arrow was drafted by the Polynesian delegation. So, perhaps his arch enemy should also be, um, should also be Polynesian. As far as the approval rating would go, 100% approval rating for Polynesian Merlin, with 33.3 strongly approving and 66.7 somewhat approving. And the fan cast, this one is a little tough for me. I think that at a certain other phases of his life, he'd be a stronger casting, but I think he's a little bit getting up in age. And we've seen him play Boba Fett, maybe not as well as we would have liked. But that's Tamara Morrison. I think he definitely brings the at one point in time physicality that would be necessary as kind of an aging fighter. Um, I mean, I think that I can understand why he would be chosen. And again, going against what I thought, 100% approval rating for Tamara Morrison as a Polynesian Merlin, with 33.3 strongly approving and 6.7 somewhat approve of Tamara Morrison as the fan cast for Merlin. So, we kind of ran through it. It was very quick. But these were some picks that really kind of kind of worked, for the most part. They didn't really take a lot of stretching, so to speak. It didn't involve a lot of overthinking to imagine these characters in the roles that they were drafted in. Such tends to happen when you're dealing with some of the later round picks, where characters are being brought in to the fold that have already been part of the fold before, just kind of filling out the rosters. So we'll leave it there. I don't want to say too much. I mean, we still have one more round to go as we catch up with our Rachel draft for season 8. The final round wrapped up a little while back, and I want to get us all up to speed a little bit so that we can get ready to dive into the Dynasty Draft, which kicks off. By the time you're listening to this podcast, it has already kicked off. So you can go to all the regular places, racialdraft.com, racial draft racial draft pod, sorry, on Twitter, racial.draft on Instagram and Threads, and we're also on Blue Sky at Racial Draft. Uh, yeah, find us, Facebook as well, YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're looking at my face, then you've already gotten part of the way there. Just have to hit that like button or smash that like button, as they say. Go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get all of the updates. You get the recaps, you'll get the podcasts, and you'll stay current and up to speed as we change the complexion of the comic book universe, one draft pack at a time, through the racial draft. Until next time, all things